Good morning, ladies and gents, and hello, Zonoth. So today I had some plans, but those plans kind of went out the window when I realized that maybe, just maybe, I could use the grid plugin that I've been using to generate my grid. Sorry, let me try that again. I realized I could use the plugin I've been using to put the terrain down. And I thought, well, why don't I use that for my grid? At bare minimum, it would make it go a whole lot faster for placing the standard points, and I could still place my non-standard points, and it wouldn't be the end of the world, right? Issue being that because there's nothing attached to the grid node itself has no it has no mesh information. It has no particle information. It's got nothing attached to it. And because it has nothing attached to it, it has difficulty, or for some reason it's having difficulty setting the object's position. And so I'm poking at that first because that kind of seems like the way to go. I'm hoping if I can do this, then suddenly I can start setting down my points very quickly. I can recalculate the points, and then I can just kind of be done with this problem of not being able to place these reliably. And actually, one thought would be I could just slap on a I could just slap on a sphere onto each one that gets removed on runtime. Something like that. That might be one way to handle it, because it seems, I don't know, kind of silly that I can't handle this situation of it not having an object attached to it, because it still has a position, right? There shouldn't be a problem there. I already had to I already commented out one of the error lines that they had in here. So it's already looking, I won't say grim, but it definitely was not a good start, because people tend to put error lines in for good reasons. Yeah, specifically when I was trying to put the object down, it was like, oh yeah, by the way, you don't contain all of these different things. And so that was kind of unfortunate. Of course, finding the thing which I've changed is honestly becoming somewhat difficult. Granted, we always have at least, there it is. At least we have our diff, which tells us, okay, it's in the prefab validator. OG prefab validator. Sweet. I don't need 2 copies of Visual Studio running. Object Grid 3D. Yes, I know scripts. Bollocks. It's funny, for such a simple, well, for something that feels incredibly simple, it probably isn't actually terribly simple, but for something that feels so simple, this thing has a lot of scripts. Specifically, okay, well, I have a diff in front of me, so all I have to do really is that. And suddenly, I know exactly where I commented this line out. So its issue is that it doesn't contain a mesh light trigger or particle system object. I wonder why that matters. I wonder why that would. Does object hierarchy contain a mesh, a light, a particle system, or a trigger? Why would it matter? An object hierarchy can be used for an object placement operation if it contains at least one object that has a mesh or something else attached to it. Really? That's unfortunate, because I'm using objects that are nice and empty and have nothing at all. Has mesh light component. Gosh darn it. So the reason I don't want to just attach a mesh to it and be on my merry way and have the mesh delete itself when the time comes when you actually play the game is mostly just a matter of taking up extra space and kind of throwing it away when it comes to the processing time when you first start the game. I'd rather not hit play, wait 5 seconds, and then go. Right now it's pretty instant. Maybe a couple. Okay, maybe it is 4 or 5 seconds. Wow. Well, I'd rather not turn that 5 seconds to 10 seconds. At the same time, I'd like to have a tool that allows me to actually use my grid nodes correctly. Otherwise, I'm still hand placing them, and hand placing them obviously is not a great thing. So there's got to be some way we can do at least some way to fit this inside our system. Because I just don't want to do this by hand anymore. Like I've done a decent amount of this by hand, and I'm really not having it. I might be able to look at their stuff and recreate my own tool based on their tool. That might be one way to do it, although you saw how much code was in there. That's actually maybe not an option. If only because there's just so much code floating around inside this thing. Yeah, gosh darn. Like, also there's a lot here in terms of helpers and gizmos and all that that I could happily ignore. Oh, that's weird. They built their own mouse button and then used it pretty much all over the place. Okay. That's really funny. It's always interesting to dig through someone else's code like this, see what they've done, and then spend the time to kind of figure out not only what they've done, but maybe why they've done some of it. For example, one might ask why an enumeration for mouse buttons when 0, 1, and 2 are pretty universally known, and it does increase the readability quite a bit when you say, oh, well, this enum.left mouse button. Downside being that you always have to cast it to an int. It's not the worst thing in the world, though, and I like the readability over a lot of other things that it may or may not give you. So I'm actually kind of... Oh, mesh combiner. Interesting. Interesting. I'm also learning more about the tools that I pay for, because honestly, some of this I've not seen before. At least I've not seen until now. Okay, so if our prefab doesn't contain a mesh light trigger or particle system object, they consider it invalid. And it's because they're asking whether the hierarchy can be used for object placement. I'm guessing that's because they create a guide that's on the screen while you're doing your work. Yeah, they say they have an object placement guide. Activate rotation link. No. rotating the guide when you press keys, not quite. Oh dear Lord, there's a lot of code in here. Okay. Maybe that's not the way to go about this. Maybe I'm thinking about this way too hard. I mean, I definitely could go so far as to say I've got this group of grid nodes. I could then do something like this and then tell them all to recalculate. I love how only one of them actually recalculates when I do this. And as nice as this button is, I can't help but wonder if there's a better way to do this for multiple objects like this. Also, it's really difficult to actually see my connections here. Whoop. That's not what I wanted to do. Because for some reason the grid lines that are being drawn are not being properly depth checked. So there we go. Okay, there's a quick 6 more nodes. That's not really a sustainable solution though. I'm not a huge fan of that. Also, you'll note something is clearly, well, no, nothing's wrong there. There's no way to go south. Okay. Also, we can kind of walk off the map with it. And into trees. Okay, I need to watch my tree placement. Clearly, I placed this one not thinking that, so if I nuke this one, and then the one before it, I'll want to recalculate. Oh, but it's going to put all that back. Delete that one, recalculate this. Or just switch this to none. Problem solved. Man, I just want a better way to work with my tools. Because honestly, that's going to make or break a lot of this. Especially since that little addition I just did doesn't actually cover much. Like the amount of area, I think I just added, yeah, that little span. You can kind of see some red lines in there. Like that's all. That's not a ton of space. In terms of player interactivity, that's a tiny, tiny little space. So how do we do this better? Because we've already got one tool that allows us to do some cool stuff, but at the same time it's got some limitations. Specifically, its big limitation is there needs to be attached to each object some kind of mesh or light or something else. So maybe we could just slap a light onto this, or not a light. Lights would be insane. Slap it like a tiny, meaningless little mesh that just gets deleted when it starts. Let's grab our actual grid node prefab. I kind of hate to do this, but here's a mesh filter. And where's a sphere? Sphere should be, yeah. Yay, it's got a sphere. Does that help? Let's remove the old one. Try that again. Okay, so it seems to be doing a little better. It at least doesn't seem to be throwing errors at bare minimum. Of course, clicking seems to also select, even though I'm in object placement mode. And clicking put a grid node down, but it put it in under the terrain. I'm not sure I'm exactly a fan of what it's trying to do. As neat as the idea is. Oh, you know what? Ha, that's my fault. I'm pretty frickin' sure. If I hit 2, there we go. Okay, so at least it'll appear on the right part of the terrain. God, that's so weird. To click and have it select terrain. And then it adds a box collider and mesh collider. Great. Nor did it place it correctly. Note how it placed it at actually 2.5 instead of 2, like I asked it to. And it's also at minus 3.5 and minus 14. Yeah, no, I don't think that's going to work. Okay. Unfortunate, but worth a try. Let's remove this random sphere from our grid nodes. Oh boy. Crap, crap, crap. We could make an editor tool, although I've tried this before. I've already poked at this, and the undocumentedness of the of Unity's system is completely baffling as well. So I think I'm gonna have to come back to this at a later time. Why is there one way off in the distance? Unity, what are you doing? Oh boy. Alright, so what else do we have? I definitely wanted to take a poke at some stuff. Today was kind of a the initial idea, at least, was going to be that I wanted to clean up some of the animation stuff happening in these bats. You'll note each time I hit one of them, there's only a chance that they kind of take the damage. So let's see if I can hit one. So you'll note there was no hit animation. None of these bats did anything when one of them took a hit. They're doing a decent job with their attack animation, but for some reason they're not. I'm actually going to hop into the animator for it to see if I can't pin this down, because it's incredibly annoying that that is the case, that I can't just see what they're up to, at least not easily. So for this bat, for example, okay, so there we go. We can see he's sitting in idle. And he has this transition that says when when his attack bite is true, and then it immediately goes back. So why is that one so much more reliable than this one? That's the part that gets me. I guess part of it is probably because of the fact that one, we're actually waiting for the animation to go, versus the other, the animation is just kind of secondary. So we might want to go so far as to say when you take damage, which, where is that character? Here it is. When you take damage and play that animation, that maybe we go so far as to actually ensure that we wait on that animation. I'm not a huge fan of that idea, but it's one idea at least that might work. Because this damage animation, you'll note, like, we turn it on and then we turn it right back off. There's no There's no waiting on it any other way. Versus if we look at a combat action, we actually set it to true, wait for it to trigger. But no, we only wait a frame. Versus this has a timer attached to it and actually goes for probably what is more than one frame. Time.delta time is probably a couple frames. Well, no, that is a frame. So let's see if that helps. Making it 2 frames where that's true. If not, we might have to come up with a better way to do this. And the way it goes in and out of that animation is incredibly ugly. I'm not a fan. Like, all the other animations, you'll note, look pretty clean. Like, okay, that looked fine. And of course, as they die, it actually becomes incredibly difficult. Let's take the party, since I can. And you, let's see. Your strength is now 1. In fact, all your strengths are now 1. Just so that even if you hit it, you don't deal it a ton of damage. Okay, there's a hit, and I didn't have the model sitting. So he's sitting in idle. Oh, and then he dies. That's unhelpful. So that's, okay, this is the controller. This is essentially the piece that says what it can go to and what it can go from. And you'll notice it's pretty obvious that it just, for the most part, is connections to idle. Some of them have connections to each other, but aside from that, I'm guessing that idle is kind of a neutral pose for this thing. Attack with sound wave, attack with bite, die, and then take damage. Also interesting that they exported each of these into their separate pieces. Instead of having one export that is all the frames. Also interesting that they have a bunch of different, it almost looks like a bunch of different start poses, right? If you look at all of these are all frame 0, and yet fly forward, idle. Take damage does not loop. Then we have controller, then we have the actual bat with all, oh, this, so the standard bat doesn't actually have any of the animations. Interesting. I'm kind of learning more about how this thing was made. It's weird to see it because I've never really messed with a ton of full textured animated pieces. Like, usually I don't get that far to the point where I have assets like this. I tend to, at least personally, work on gameplay until gameplay's been driven into the ground, and I'm pretty much done with gameplay forever, or at least until I have something that works. Thank you. Yeah, okay, that's unhelpful. Okay, so we've essentially got FBX files with all of our animations. Each of those animations getting exported goes out to here, to each of these states, and then from the states, it then has some basic booleans that cover its parameters between each of these. I'm actually going to dump the animator over here so I can see things in real time and play with it. So if I turn on take damage, oh, look at that. It's actually the fact that the animation is poorly done for taking damage. It's not smooth. It actually has that hiccup at the end of it. Okay, so I thought this was something with my code that I was doing wrong, but it actually looks like and you'll note like some of these do twitch, right? I hit it and it snaps between positions. I kind of thought there was a crossfade going on here, so that I should see some kind of easing in or out. For example, the attack bite. You'll note that it actually keeps running part of the animation so that the timing works out. And you'll note it doesn't twitch terribly bad. Like, that one looks pretty nice. So, oh man, I'm kind of sad that this is just taking up my entire day so far, but I guess that's how it goes sometimes. Hey, Dan. How's it going? Thanks for hosting, man. Unfortunately, I wish today was a little more interesting, but fighting with animation issues is not the most exciting things in the world. Okay, so most of these look decent, right? You can see that there's a clean transition regardless of what point in the state it's in. But I forgot that if I let it finish a die animation that I immediately remove it from the fight, and that's just like the end of that monster. Whoopsies. Gosh darn. Yeah, that twitch, the way it freezes there, it's like there's an extra frame or two at the end. I wonder if I can cut that out of the animation. So if I find, where is it? Take damage, here we go. So if I find the animation itself, right now it says the animation is about a half second at 30 frames. So what happens if I just, let's see. It doesn't even look that long. I mean, Unity doesn't even seem to show that issue. If I cut off a couple frames, will that help? Because at this point, I'm taking some shots in the dark here. It's acting differently, I should say, between the two. Alright, so take damage. Let's see if looking at the interesting. So it looks like take damage completes and then waits almost a little before heading back down the line. It's like there's it's almost like there's some kind of has exit time. No, that definitely is not the case. Transition duration. That feels almost a little better. I'm trying to find differences between this and the the other states that exist, because you'll note the other states have a very clean look and a very clean setup. So we're trying to find the differences. What makes one work while the other doesn't? Because it's... I think one of them's stuck, guys. We broke it. You off. Okay, cool. Okay, so we've got the model, and we say attack bite, and it's able to do this interrupt right off the bat, and the interrupt looks nice. It has no exit time. It might be this connection between take damage and fly forward. If I could actually remove that so that it has to go back to idle each time, and then I can remove the transitional exit time from it. That might help. Granted, I think I just really broke something. Okay, so you have an exit time and you do not. Aha, look at that. Okay, if we lower the exit time, suddenly it's headed back up to the idle state a lot sooner and isn't actually getting caught on it. So why did the lower... oh gosh, and you guys have been talking and telling me this. Untick has exit time and put transition time to 0. Not quite 0, but we're close. I think Tasty Graph is really onto it. It's the fact that our animation time is actually longer than the animation or the transition time itself. So it literally is stalling at the end of the frame. So if you look at this, you can see when I put 0.5 in, it extends this a little bit. And it hits the end and then just waits because there's just this dead time there. So if we cut this in half, suddenly it looks like actually our transition is 0.1. It almost looks like it's 0.2. Maybe a little less. It's essentially this time here is what I think we want to have as our exit time. So that looks like 0.2. Obviously there's a little teensy bit of lag time left, so I'm going to keep tuning this until it looks nice, because really I don't care if it's perfect as long as the animation looks fine. Now that wing twitching is a little weird. Makes me wonder if that's part of our interesting. Okay, maybe not that fast. Okay, we're looking like we're in better shape at least. It doesn't quite look as bad when it comes to the connection here. Oh crud, did I just make changes that are only going to persist? Okay. I think I remember exactly what my change is at least. No, it kept them. It kept the values. Good. I do appreciate that it can keep these values inside of the state machine. Okay, so that looks a lot much better. A lot much better. Thank you, words. That's incredibly helpful. I can't help but notice the wing twitch still. It looks like the wing twitch is when we transition out of our transitional time here. Let's try turning that up. No, it's actually at a certain point in the animation when it does that. Huh. what I'm doing by pulling these bars around is I'm essentially changing how long into each animation I think it should go. There we go. Look at that. It's not quite as noticeable. You'll note the wing actually snaps in rotation somewhat. But it's a lot less noticeable. Let's try turning it down a little further just to make sure. Oh, I may have turned it down too much. We're essentially trying to get the two to match as best as we can. There we go. Perfect. That is what I was hunting for. Something like that. That's pretty smooth looking. We have about, it looks about like 110 frames. Oh, no, 120. Okay, good. So we've hit the 2-second mark at 60 frames pretty cleanly. Okay, let's see if this looks better, at least. I would really, really hope that this animation... Whoop. I'm just going to ditch the animator here. Let's see how that looks. See if we can even notice it. Oh, I definitely left something turned on inside the animator, I believe. Whoops. Your animator. Specifically... Crud. Where did I put that animator? There it is. That should not be on all the time. And let's just double check. No. You off. Good. Good Unity. Alright, let's try this again. So, there they are. They fly at their own offsets. That's great. I'm going to do a bunch of standard and maybe some non-standard attacks just to make sure I hit things. That's much better. It definitely looks a lot better. There's a little stall in the wings. You'll note that the wings kind of stall out in the air in an up position for a bit, but then they at least continue cleanly afterwards instead of like freezing in the air or doing anything silly like that. So I definitely like this a lot better. It's a lot better looking. Bats are quite adorable. Thanks, Dan. I wish I could claim credit, but unfortunately not the case. They are assets which I have purchased, and so they're good looking mostly because they didn't require any work from me. Okay, cool. What else? I had kind of a small laundry list of things to do today. It wasn't really like, let's do big task A, because we're getting to that point where we're going to start needing ways to insert content into the game. And so some of that is going to be not just standard content like combat, but also we're going to need combat as far as, or sorry, not combat, content as far as things like tutorials. So I'll need a bunch of one-off scripts for tutorials saying, okay, here's how you do fight stuff. Fight stuff should be kind of obvious now. Here's how you do, we're going to need a bunch of scripts for character creation. Those are also kind of one-off scripts. We're going to need some scripts for level up, and that won't be one-off, hopefully. That'll be something that we'll reuse each time we level up. Although the level up system I have in mind is not exactly standard either, so we might be able to get some code reuse out of it. We'll see. I love how I have just a standard like quad texture. Okay. Also the fact that it has frames attached to it, or it thinks it does. That's adorable. I don't actually have frames attached to this. There are no animations to be imported. And there's no rig on this thing. I promise. If I put a quad in, it's just a quad. That's all. I can't even think of what I use it for, though, so let's just delete that. What else? What else? What else? What else? Party money. Party money is kind of easy. but I guess it's something that has to get done. So let's just input that real quick. Actually, okay. I recall what I wanted to do at some point, and I need to look at UI a little more before I do this. But right now, you'll note I click on a character, and the inventory screen comes up, and it lets me do things like, you know, discard potions or items, or to even use potions or items. So part of that is we've got inventory. Part of it is we also need tabs here on the side, or I'd like tabs somewhere on this thing so that I can show and hide different parts of the character UI. So this isn't just inventory UI, so that we can actually have like character stats as one, party stats as another, inventory as another, because we want a bunch of ways to get to this information. So actually, let's I don't have a ton of time left, but I do want to dive into something like that, start in on a feature that I think would be neat and useful. So let's do that. Let's start in on that UI. Specifically, items. Okay, so this is... Where the heck did I hide it? Okay, here's our character inventory. And I believe if I back out far enough and switch to 2D... Yeah, so here's our inventory screen. Now, as cool as it is, it's a little specific right now, mostly because it's just character inventory. We need to make this stats inventory, probably some kind of spell review, so you can look at spells and cast them. This will probably be the way you cast spells from your inventory, or from the main screen. So we've got a bunch of pieces of information that we have to handle, and we don't really have a great way to handle most of it. I also can't help but notice that I have this button on the side, and I kind of want it near the top instead, since that's that's the wrong axis. That is also the wrong axis. Thank you, Unity. That's what I was hunting for here. I kind of want it on the top, because if I'm going to be putting tabs on the side, I don't exactly want this like random button hanging around. That, or the other thing we could do is, instead of putting it up here, I could leave it at the bottom and say, hey, here's a button that always is like this. And it always is there near the bottom to kind of hang out and be there when you want to close inventory. And this is actually going to need a name change too, because character inventory is no longer, it's not relevant anymore, right? It's not only inventory, it's going to be character inventory, it's going to be character stats. I might even go so far as to actually put it under a, let's actually do that now. Here's an empty node. The empty node is going to be the actual character. I'll just call it the inventory page. And here's our character window. Ta-da! Much simpler that way. So things like background and title can stick around, but the backpack label and all the backpack slots will actually go under the inventory page, so that I can, at a moment's notice, just hide all of this information. I don't know if I want to actually copy the tile background. Why not? It's less work if I copy data here. So let's just shift all of this information here. And you can see not much looks like it's changed, but the entire makeup of this thing is different now. So we still are managing things the way we did before. The close me button, I just want to double check, still has, yep, it still has the right game object. So this will still operate as it did before, but now we can start adding more bits and pieces to it. So, for example, if we go into image, oh, I'm going to need icons for this, aren't I? I'm going to want some icons, because because I realize, first off, I realize I'm starting to really repeat the same stuff over and over and over when it comes to how all my UI looks and feels. Image, let's put you further up on the food chain, or sorry, lower on the food chain so that it gets covered by things. So one of these will be an inventory image. We can actually go so far as to not use image. We can use button and just remove the text from it. Just so we have the tie-ins from we want the tie-ins for the on-click, so we can actually click it and start handling some of our very, very basic stuff. We do want this higher up so that it gets drawn over. Great. Also, I can't note but that it still has text. Let's get rid of that. I'm actually just going to switch this back out to Unity's default, at least for now, because it's difficult to see what's going on with it. 48, 50. Yeah. So one of these will be, here's probably our stats button. Not status, stats. Come on. There we go. And then this one will probably be our inventory button. Actually, I'll stop calling them buttons and call them tabs, just because that's, in a world of actual UI, that's what these things are. They're tabs for pages, right? If you think of yourself flipping through a book and you've got the pages of information on them, and then you put in a bookmark or tab, the tab tells you where the information is. No, Tasty Graph, unfortunately none of this content is mine. It's all open source stuff that I've pulled from various corners of the internet. So some of it is, let's just make that a little larger. So some of it is, it's all different artists. The UI is from a group called Ravenmore. Makes some very nice UI. And also some great icons. I've been absolutely in love with the art style, and that's kind of part of what's been influencing the art style of the game in return. The character portraits are the thing that feel off the most right now. They kind of feel out of place, and I do think that that's going to be, when it comes to art, one of the first things I replace is getting character portraits in that don't look like they're quite so realistic, or that don't fit the toon style that I'm going for as much, or do fit the toon style I'm going for. Sorry. It does kind of have that SNES feel, doesn't it? But it's at least a little more modern. Also, you'll notice all my fonts are still Arial, because I just haven't taken the time to find a new font. And that's something that I honestly need to do. All right. Yeah, I wasn't a huge fan of how Might and Magic did their portraits. Tasty Graph is mentioning how their portraits were all very realistic and the rest of the graphics were kind of toon or cartoony in comparison. And that always kind of threw me for a loop. You had these very like regal, good-looking portraits for your heroes, and then your monsters were these like 2D animated sprites, and so it felt almost kind of out of place. Just for the sake of having all my UI out, I'm just going to put in all the tabs I can think of. I can only really think of 3, having stats, inventory, and spells. Spells tab, spell tab, spell, singular. I like singular. Although that's just personal preference, so I don't know. What else? I think until I get images in here, obviously I can't mess with their look, but we can at least get some other pages in here so that we can start to, so here's our stats page, start to control the visibility of things. So we have a stats page. Surprise, surprise, the stats page is probably going to be whatever the size of the background is. I wonder if I should inherit these to the background or not. Because the nice thing about doing that is now the inventory page, I actually can just say, look, just do a stretch to it. Same with the stats page. These don't have their own sizes. They perfectly match the size of the object that they're attached to. I do like that a fair bit more. It keeps things a little cleaner, so I can, all the content hides behind the background, and then all the non-content or the other pieces of information are kind of out in the open like this to be clicked and handled and messed with. So I think that's going to work out better. And obviously we need another empty for our spell tab, or spell page, sorry. Stats, inventory, spells. Sweet. Now the question is, can I do this all? Okay, background, no. Can I do this all using the callbacks? That's my curiosity here. For example, if I take the stats tab, right? You click on the stats tab and what does it do? Well, we set this one to active and we set the other two to inactive. Stats tab. No, cancel. Don't actually do that. So the stats page becomes active, and then the inventory and spell page become inactive. Now, if we have to do more than that, then I'll probably want to shift this out to an actual script. But for now, if I can do this all with data bindings, I will be incredibly happy. Mostly because doing things with data bindings is really some of the cleanest way to handle stuff. There's no code to go wrong. There's nothing to cause bugs. It's all very simple, very direct. It's all data. And keeping the data running like this will also keep us from making things too complex. So let's see, set active, so not the stats page, but the inventory page becomes active, and the spell page becomes inactive. And you can see how this is nice and simple, right? Otherwise I'd have to make a class, and we'd have to attach it to the character window. We don't even have to bother with that here. No extra classes or code. Pretty much the less code you run, the better. Alright, and spell page or spell tab is the spell page. Finally, I'm just going to take the title background and copy it across to each of the pages so that I have titles. And your title is not going to say inventory. Yours will say stats. Or maybe even the character's name, but that might be a bit much. I'll just say stats. Or even character. There's our title background and title. Today's going to be fun. I've got more interviews at work, interviewees, I should say. It's always fun to do interviews, see what people know. I know most people don't like interviews in the same way that I do, but also that I can be a little crazy when it comes to doing interviews in the first place. I tend to actually enjoy them. I think of them as kind of mental puzzles. And so for me, an interview is a lot of fun. Especially if I have to sit there and figure things out. Like if they ask me, if they start asking me things I know, it's not quite as exciting. So there's our character page, here's our inventory, and our spell page. And we didn't even have to add any code. It's all entirely data bindings. That is awesome. You are no longer a character inventory prefab. You are simply a character window prefab. Cool. I like. Do I have a hover color here? Target graphic, normal color, highlighted color. I'm kind of curious if I can add like a little yellow tinge to it when I'm highlighting it or making use of it. And I know I'm coming like right up on that moment when I have to run off, but I'm just so excited. This is awesome. I don't know why I felt the need. There we go. Look at that. We have hover effects. It kind of works to click on it. The only thing is that when you click on it and it turns yellow and is all highlighted like that, I can't help but note that the next one turns yellow as well. I'll have to think about that and work with it a little. Also, it says spell, not spells. That's an issue of mine, not anything else's. Let's take that character window and fix that. Alright. Guys, it has been fun. It has been a blast getting stuff done today. I unfortunately have to run off, but for those of you who are here for the first time, I would say if you're enjoying yourself, hit the follow button below. If you want to catch up on all the videos that I've been doing, curious kind of how I got to this point, there is a YouTube channel linked below where I have all the other videos in sequence, properly stitched together, because I do have technical issues from time to time, unfortunately, with my computer. So I definitely appreciate all the follows and all the support that you guys give me constantly just by showing up. So thank you very much for all your support and help in this, especially Tastygraph today with the good comments on the animation issues and why I had too long of an exit or transition time on that. Thanks a bunch. Hopefully I will see all of you lovely people next time.